Margaret Atwood has often explained that everything in her dystopian novel, The Handmaid's Tale, was inspired by real life. Every brick of the totalitarian government of Gilead was built from true stories documented in newspaper headlines that Atwood had collected and clipped and studied.
At the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library in Toronto, Atwood has archived stacks of her research. That is the hundreds of news clippings that substantiate her plots.
So this is folder upon folder of your research for Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, yeah, lots of it.
She writes by a strict rule. If it didn't happen somewhere at some time, it doesn't make it into the pages of her fiction.
Women forced to have babies.
Communists are making women have babies. Persistent non-pregnancy will be considered a crime against the state.
Remember that line. Persistent non-pregnancy will be considered a crime against the state. There was a time, not even very long ago, when Atwood's book, the news clippings she carefully preserved as she wrote it, could be seen as a cautionary tale for people living in a Western democracy like ours. But here and now, in 2026, in the United States of America, we're churning out the same kind of headlines that Margaret Atwood used as the building blocks of Gilead. They're not even big headlines. They're mostly local news pieces here and there that barely get noticed at the national level. And that's because the anti-abortion regimes of post-Roe America have become so efficient at creating a reproductive police state that the horrors being visited on women and girls every single day have become ordinary. The journalist Jessica Valenti has been collecting these stories, however, ever since Roe fell. Her Substack, Abortion Every Day, is where we found the story of a family that I want to tell you about. A mother and a daughter who could be your neighbors just as easily as they could be characters in a Margaret Atwood novel. Here's the headline, quote, "She helped plan her teen's abortion, so CPS took her daughter away." The story gets worse from there. This mother and daughter story was shared by Valenti, by lawyers and advocates from a group called If, When, How. It's a non-profit that's focused on reproductive justice through community work, legal service, financial support, and policy advocacy. The mother and daughter in Valenti's story are clients of If, When, How because they fear reprisals from the state. Valenti explains she's sharing as little identifying information about them as possible and has given them pseudonyms. The single mother, Jane, and her 14-year-old daughter, Dana, who live in a southern state where abortion is banned. Quote, "As is often the case with scared teens, Dana didn't tell her mother that she was pregnant right away. That means by the time they started looking for abortion clinics, every single day counted. They did the difficult and time-consuming work of finding and booking an appointment with an out-of-state clinic, getting financial assistance from a practical support fund, and planning to leave within days. Jane doesn't know who called the authorities, just that CPS knocked on their door and took a terrified Dana from their home. If, When, How Legal Services Director Kylie Sunderland tells me that this removal was done without a court order. The CPS caseworker also repeatedly threatened Jane, claiming she'd be charged with murder if Dana had an abortion and that her other child, a toddler, would be taken from her care," end quote. I want to pause here and note that bringing your child across state lines for a legal abortion is not a crime anywhere in America. The way the authorities in Jane and Dana's state got around this fact and removed a terrified pregnant teen from her mother's care is by claiming they believe that Jane was coercing her daughter, forcing her to get the abortion. Dana was only returned home after her mother got an attorney and explained that the clinic required the teen to speak to them herself before booking an appointment. But that process took 4 days, and by the time Dana was returned to her mother on the 5th day, according to If, When, How Legal Services Director, it was too late. Dana's appointment, the travel arrangements, the support had passed. So this 14-year-old child was effectively forced to give birth by the anti-abortion regime running her state. Quote, "This state trapped a teen, separated her from her family, kept her from the support services she had in place, and stopped her from getting planned and scheduled abortion care. Persistent non-pregnancy will be considered a crime against the state." And that's still not even the worst part of Dana's story. The legal services director of If, When, How told Valenti that after forcing Dana to give birth, CPS opened an investigation into the teen for being a young mother. And it's that last detail, that final indignity, that cruelest trap, that is almost too much, even for the Margaret Atwood universe. It would read as an unbelievable part of a fictional dystopia. But it's the real story of a 14-year-old girl living in America in 2026. Joining me now is Dorothy Roberts, professor of sociology at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. These systems police women specifically, and the post-Roe abortion bans and the child welfare system, which you've documented so well in your book, is weaponized against women. So talk to me about this reporting by Jessica Valenti that we're now seeing mothers, a mother who was trying to help her young daughter get an abortion, being targeted in the way that we've described.
Yes, I think this story reveals the harms and the violence of these two regimes, which are often seen as separate, but they're connected. So the regime of compelled births, which is what abortion bans and restrictions on abortions do, and the regime of what I call family policing, otherwise known as the child welfare system, which is a system that operates in this very brutal way that we see in this case, where the government can weaponize it in order to target the most marginalized groups or to affect a kind of government intervention that ordinarily we would think is unconstitutional. You know, here we have an anonymous report. We don't know who reported this mother, and that happens all the time in this system. We have the removal of a child without any court order. But that happens all the time as well. CPS workers threaten a family, as was done here with the threat of you might be charged with murder, and then take children away without even going to get a court order based on an anonymous allegation and based on this made up allegation that the mother was coercing her daughter. No evidence of that. So it shows how we can take these two, or the government can take these two forms of state intervention and violence, forcing children and women to have children against their will, and then using this weapon, this powerful tool of the state that gets too little attention, the family policing system, to threaten and in the end to block the 14-year-old teenager from getting an abortion that had been planned so meticulously to get transportation out of state, to provide financial assistance. All of that gets tossed aside, and she's forced to have a child that she did not want to have. And as you mentioned, to add to the cruelty, after she has the baby, she's now investigated because she's a teen mom. That happens all the time as well in this family policing system.
So these intersecting oppressive regimes causes us to have to underline specific things about it. The phenomenon of mothers being targeted by CPS for helping their teen daughters terminate a pregnancy. Important for people to understand, and you have written about this. This is not a phenomenon that only occurs in anti-abortion states. Valenti mentions another mother who lives in a state where abortion is still legal and was still investigated by both CPS and police for helping her daughter end a pregnancy.
That's right. So again, it's a very effective and powerful tool that the state can use even against legal activity. You know, generally the family policing system targets impoverished families and low-income families and charges them with child neglect for what is actually conditions of poverty. So here we see, even in a state where abortion is legal, and If When How was reporting that this is happening in New York, Pennsylvania, you know, where abortion is legal, that assisting an abortion can be framed as if it's child abuse or neglect because it's medical neglect if the mother brings the child into the hospital because, and I should say, you know, the teen who's pregnant and has a medication abortion for help now gets charged with child abuse or child neglect or medical neglect because everything didn't go perfectly well. And again, that is a typical strategy or tactic of the family policing system, to charge marginalized mothers with medical neglect when they bring their child to the hospital for help.
That's a little hard to get your head around. So now you've got this idea of authorities going after women for medical neglect if their children are in need of abortion. The idea of that it might be abuse, And then there's this third idea that was in Jessica Valenti's story that Child Protective Services was accusing the mother of coercion, alleging that the mother was pressuring and forcing her daughter to get the abortion. And yet another piece of this anti-abortion lawmaking is parental consent, requiring a parent's permission. It's long been used as a way to make it harder for teens to access abortion. So now I don't understand how to make sense of this. On one hand, you're supposed to get the parent's permission. On the other hand, the mother is now being held responsible because she's helping her daughter get an abortion.
Yes. It just shows you how this has nothing to do with protecting children. It has nothing to do with protecting the autonomy of the child or the safety of the child. It has everything to do with trying to control children, teens, women, and their reproductive lives. And so the state that wants to do that can use CPS or the laws for abortion, I should say restricting abortion, or even in states where abortion is legal, to require these conflicting aspects, both that parents have to give consent, but also when you have a mother who is helping her child to have an abortion, that then it's coercion. So, the coercion argument is made up, as can always happen in cases of allegations against parents in this system. Again, it can be anonymous, it can be completely made up, but it can be used as a threat to coerce. Here's where the coercion comes in. It's not the coercion of the mother, the child. Right. On the part of the mother, it's coercion on the part of the state using the threat of child separation or actually removing a child from the home in order to effectuate a repressive policy.
Professor Roberts, always a pleasure to talk to you. We're always smarter for it. Thank you for being with us again. Dorothy Roberts is a professor of law and sociology at the University of Pennsylvania Law School.